Hi, I'm David from Levika Photography, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Sigma 30mm F2.8 EX-DN lens. You'll notice I left off the word art. I'm not sure if this is classified as an art lens anymore because it's missing the actual art logo. But that doesn't mean that it's not any different. The Sigma DN 30mm art lens looks just like this, but it's polished silver aluminum or black aluminum. And it has a very smooth edge to it, whereas this one has this new plastic grip, and it still has the same brass mount and you know, the same internals, the same element, the same 7 rounded blades. Nothing has really changed between the first generation and the second generation, except this one doesn't require a lens hood. And the first one didn't need a lens hood, it just came with it, and I'm not sure exactly why, but that's either here nor there. They're still both phenomenal lenses, they're no different. They still got that same funky rattle. I don't understand that, but this is a gearless motor, this lens is phenomenal with video. But it's still just a phenomenal lens in general. So let's go ahead and pop this on the camera, and we're going to take this out in the field and play with it, and we'll see how this goes. This is the 30mm, and you can definitely see I turned the distortion off on the camera. Not really much going on here as far as barrel distortion goes. You don't really see much. It's pretty straight. Right now we are at ISO 200 at 4,000th of a second at f2.8. So the video quality seems to be really good. Focusing wise, it's extremely fast. Let's check this out. Very fast focusing. No matter how you look at it, it's really fast. Still think it's faster than the Sony. Alright, let's try to get some lens flare in here. Let me go ahead and stop this down. I'm not really seeing much of anything. Brighten it back up here to where we should be. All looks good. High speed focusing test. Let's see how this does. We're wide open. ISO 800 at a 50th of a second, f2.8. So from Kato to the keyboard, to the CDs, back to the keyboard, back to Kato, over to Murray, who's falling asleep on the bed, back to Kato. I'm going to go ahead and run through a series of f-stops at ISO 100. And we'll take a look at these photos, and we'll look at f2.8, f5.6, f11, and f16 just to see what they look like. Let's talk about this really quick. This is all the way open at f2.8. And what we have is a very sharp center and just a tiny bit of softness in the corners, but very, very minor. I mean, this lens wide open is just phenomenal. Really good. It does have a tiny bit of ghosting, but very, very minor. Okay, so this is closer to its sweet spot at f5.6. And at f5.6, the whole image is just insanely sharp. Just so you guys know where this holds up, this one generates about 3,100 lines of resolution. The 60mm is about 3,200 lines of resolution, and the OSS 35mm f1.8 in the center is about 3,400 lines of resolution, but it falls off quickly as you go into the edges, and it's very soft all the way through. When we're talking about going through all the f-stops on the OSS. On this one, this is at f5.6, and this is the sweet spot of the E-mount lenses, and this thing is just tack sharp. I mean, really, really phenomenal. You cannot beat this lens. It's, for the 30mm focal range, it's hands down the sharpest one that I've seen so far. And I've seen a few of these. I've got, you know, the 35mm OSS, I've got the 30mm f3.5 macro, and then I've had 2 of these, the older version with the silver body and this newer one. And this is at f8, or actually this one's at f11, I'm sorry. And this one, edge to edge, is just insanely sharp. I mean, they have this great depth of field, tack sharp, zero problems. Just a very good quality lens. It's almost as sharp as a 60mm, but it's not quite there. But for its focal length, this is as good as it's going to get. Okay, so let's skip over here. Now this one's at f16, and I just wanted to show you that the corners just start to get ever so slightly soft. But I mean, we're talking minor. It's still above 3,000 lines of resolution. Just really solid. And then back to the middle again, you know, we're not able to actually see this as clear as we did, but it's still very sharp. Hands down, best mid-range prime yet. Okay, so let's go and look at the actual foliage. This is at f2.8. Now you can see the depth of field behind it, and I'll show you the entire image first. But as I said, with foliage, it holds UV light, so if this lens is going to flare, it's going to do it when you shoot bushes and trees, and nothing at all. We've got a slight bit of movement because of the wind, so you can see this is more in focus. This has a little bit more movement in it. Outside of that, let's go to the other corner. And this stick in a lot of other images has a tendency to flare. Not here. We've got maybe some faint ghosting where there's white, but it's so minimal. I mean, just absolutely amazing ghosting control. And as we go up the edge, there's just nothing there. And just so you can see what this whole image looks like, that's it. Very rock solid. Okay, now let's talk about the bokeh blur. Sigma in general, their lenses have a deeper depth of field than most other lenses. So in this case, if we look at Kato here, I've got him zoomed in. Notice how well this does with the blur of his whiskers. It's very solid. You know, we didn't have the weird green and magenta issues that we did on the OSS 35mm F1.8. This is what things should look like at that depth of field. And let's go out and view the entire image. Okay, so right here you can see the blur behind him is very smooth, zero issues, and in the video clips that I shot, the depth of field, the actual bokeh blur seems to be very nice, although this lens, because of its range at 30mm, I'm stumbling all over myself here, it has a slightly deeper depth of field in general, but it holds up extremely well, and it has the 7-bladed aperture, the same as the 60mm. Again, it's just not quite as sharp as a 60, but it is so close. A perfect prime. You can't really, for the money, you can't really screw it up at all. This lens is nothing short of phenomenal. It's equally as good as the 60. It is not as sharp as the 60 is in the center, but it is really, really close. I mean, really close. Clean image quality. No flaring, no distortions, no CAs, very little barrel distortion, no vignetting, nothing. I mean, it's just a very solid lens. Ultra fast autofocus. You know, I had the older version, the silver body of this, and that particular version did seem to be slightly softer in the corners at f2.8, but outside of that, they were pretty much identical. This is just a very solid lens. Now, for those of you that are like, oh, should I buy the 35mm OSS 1.8 because I want the optical stabilization and I want the shallower depth of field? Well, if that's haunting you, then yeah, go get it. But that one wide open is just crap, and at f2.8, it's still not nearly as good as this one is at f2.8. The advantage of the OSS 35mm over this one is that it's optically stabilized. So if you shoot a lot of handheld video, then yes, it does help a little bit. But if you're worried about photography, at a tenth of a second on this camera, if you put it into high speed, there's no way you can't tell me that at a tenth of a second you're not going to get one sharp frame out of a burst. So as far as optical stabilization for photography goes, no, I don't think there's an issue there. I think this is a better lens in general. Sony does make good lenses, but this particular grouping, the 60 and the 30 and the 19 all seem to be really good. But the 30, you know, compared to the Sony 35mm OSS or the 30mm 3.5 macro, which I also have, this one's still very good. It focuses down to a foot, so it's not like the macro. The macro focuses down to, like, I think 3/4 of an inch. I mean, there's a lot of situations where the front of that lens is hitting stuff. I'll be reviewing that later. But this in general is phenomenal. So yes, go buy it. You cannot go wrong. So I hope you guys liked my video. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. I do now have a donation thing for the channel now, so if you guys want to help me out with equipment, if there's something you want to see down the road, feel free to make a small donation. Outside of that, I hope you guys like my video, and up next is 19mm, and we'll see you guys next time.